What is an innocent smoothie? Well, firstly, I can tell you it's delicious, evident by the fact I finished mine. But today we'll not be going over the drink itself, but the company, that is circular in nature. So, who are innocent smoothie? So it started by Richard Reed, Ellen Ballard, and John White in '98 in Cambridge. They thought up the idea of a ski trip. So it was first launched at a music festival in London, where there was a yes or no kind of polling thing based on the different flavours you might get. For example, this one is Citrus Defence. Current status, Europe's best-selling smoothie brand. Ownership, majority owned by the Coca-Cola conglomerate since 2013. And geographic reach, well, it's far beyond the United Kingdom now. France, Ireland, Germany, Austria, Scandinavia, and the UAE, and many more, to my understanding. It's been a B Corp since 2018, and it's since pledged to give 10% of profits to good causes. Isn't that nice? So I'm going to take you through the timeline quickly. 98 get founded. 09, Coke by 10%. 9, Coke by 10% stake. 2010, Coke by 58% stake. 2013, by 90% stake, practically taking over. In 2013, Doug Douglas went on to become CEO. 2018, becomes full certified B Corp, and in 21, Blender Factory is open. That's that big factory, which we'll talk about later. 2022, Nick becomes CEO. Didn't see his name available. Okay, the building blocks of innocent. So, high quality ingredients, environmental awareness, generosity, commercial, and entrepreneurial. I think that's how you say that. Critical assessment, innocent sustainability strategy. It's a B Corporation since 2018, gives 10% of its profits to good causes. Uses recycled plastic, and through doing so, saves 2,500 tonnes of plastic over 3 years. Wow. Targets 100% recycled or renewable bottling by 2030. But bottles remain mostly single use. Well, that's not too good. So strategy is still closer to recycling than reuse/refill, with fruit sourcing as well, as the Coca-Cola ownership may complicate its sustainable image. That's not good. Let's go on to Innocent's business model. Value proposition, well, healthy, natural drinks with an ethical brand identity. Products, smoothies, juices, and plant-based drinks across 22 different countries. Customers, health-conscious, convenience-focused consumers willing to pay premium prices for quality, sustainable products, or alternatively, just like smoothies like me. Key resources, fruit growers, packaging suppliers, factories, retail distribution networks. Strategic challenge, create value, or reducing emissions across farming, packaging, and transport. I'm going to hand over to my friend James.
Right, so in this, we've split it into people, profit, and planet. In 2004, the Innocent Foundation was made to provide a tackling to world hunger, examples of them really caring about the communities, and you see this through Innocent's Foundation. They've always been focused on people, despite often making a loss. Right, talk speaking profits. They launched a trial scheme in the US with McDonald's in early 2010 to 2012, and they also really struggling off the financial crisis. This scheme came to an end in 2012. However, with their planetary initiatives, mapped its carbon footprint in 2004, one of the first UK companies to do so. In 2007, the bottles were redesigned to be entirely REBT, or recycled plastic, and, well, as best as they could be. And they increased the use of boats, trains, and lower cost of carbon, and they aimed towards lower emissions in the supply chain. Right. Since 2018, they've been a certified B Corp with a score of 92.5. They've received an increased score since of 103, and since they've contributed to 16 million, and they've always placed people before profit. However, they have still been making a profit. Anyone knows Innocent Smoothie, anyone knows what they like. But particularly in the UK, it's become a very well-known and popular drink, as it was during this time. However, this has kind of had a bad impact on the planet, rapid growth, reduced sales. Right, speaking of the planet, as we've mentioned, they became a B Corp. This does come with environmental concerns. In 2019, they committed to carbon neutral by 2025. It's 2026, and they're not. And this has been revised to 2030. And as you can see, their 2018 B Corp score was 92.5, far above the 80% need, the 80 need to become a B Corp. Right, on to recent history. Since the pandemic and the cost of living crisis across the world, they have opened a new factory. They decided to innovate, recognizing the strength of strategic and circular economy, as opposed to cutting quality of ingredients or rapidly increasing prices. They've launched the Farmers Innovation Fund to fund the supply chain and to encourage farmers to become more and more innovative and make farms great again. How they do now. So we made a brief SWOT analysis. They've got a strong brand, strong corporate culture. They've got so many third-party certifications. However, they've started receiving dividends. They've got the money of Coca-Cola. However, they've got rising costs, pressure from Coca-Cola to start making money, and they've got a weak financial position. They face threats of new competitors, supply side issues, a global cost of living crisis, which has reduced consumer demand as well as increasing costs, and they've got certain opportunities in a health-focused public and new technology. Here's just some of the NGOs they work with. We've split it into supply chains, manufacturing, and at the end of pipe / the final phase. So let's move on to customer supply chain. The aforementioned Farmers Innovation Fund. The blender is located in Rotterdam, which is not only the biggest port in the United Kingdom, but also it is right there as you enter Rotterdam. Sorry, biggest port in the Netherlands. And so they've really cut down on miles, and also Rotterdam is a very built-up area. It's a massive commercial and transport hub, so they've been able to use electric trucks, barges, trains, as opposed to driving at 300 miles in the country. Right, speaking of, here's their supply chain. You've got Costa Rica, Brazil, India, the Philippines, and but they only really seem to sell to Western Europe. They pulled out of China in 2022, reduced costs, and Russia for obvious reasons. Right. So we've isolated some key areas for improvement. There's a huge supply chain. 50% of their carbon emissions come from their supply chain, and flavors are pretty complicated. As of the latest data, 80% of smoothies are made in one place, the blender, and they've reduced their packaging rate by 25%. So this is an example of their design. So you've got the system thinking and the design thinking to become pretty circular. Right now, speaking of, they've optimized manufacturing. So as you can see here, they've optimized the blending of the juices. However, 25% of their packaging materials is 25% of their emissions. The blender costs 200 million, produces, it's a fully electric factory right on the water, as you can see here, and it allows greater control of the supply. They've really adopted circular centralization, right? However, end of pipe, this is the biggest issue for Smoothie, innocent. They've had issues where the bottles, like again, they're just thrown away. And they've had issues with how these are disposed. The average public isn't very competent with this, right? They haven't really, in 2022, they had a £14 million loss, despite consistent revenue and consistent costs. However, charity donations have always remained very strong. Right. So what does the future hold? The manufacturing consolidation has improved. They have suggested they wish to continue efforts to improve manufacturing, particularly the blender, and further increase the circularity of their supply chain, the Farms Initiative Fund, and the HEROES Act. Right. And waste. Innocent do not have any plans to change plastic bottles, however, this is a pretty big issue. Bottles are still likely to be thrown away. In the UK, according to Parliament, 75% of bottles are recycled. However, that's still 25%. That's not a true circular economy. And there are pretty feasible alternatives. The aluminium cans that parent company use, or bigger containers. So the average innocent smoothie bottle is only 300 millilitres. It's actually quite small. So bigger containers that's packaging, and they can sell in bulk, so they can sell cartons. Right. However, they have been very good to their suppliers. As mentioned, they're constantly on their backs. They dedicate significant resources to this. They've only wanted to increase their Farms Innovation Fund. Now they made 13 million as of the latest data, and they've only really started ramping up. They reinvest in their suppliers because they recognise how good it is to be able to be circular, not reliant on external suppliers. So in conclusion, Innocent Smoothie have since inception been a leader in environmental conscious companies. They continue to strive to be circular, however, they are not there yet. Sustainability is a core value of the business, however, it is not above profit. And they are oriented around environmental awareness. This is a key part of their business. It's not just there's room to improve, particularly packaging, and they need to continue investments in other things. Thank you for watching. All of the references will be in the description.